This is James from Gamefront with a short but important wish list of things I'd like to see in Dragon Age Inquisition. The last thing I want to do is come across as a whiny gamer that's just complaining about a couple of games that are pretty damn good. But at the risk of that, here's my short bitch list, starting with Dragon Age 2. I've played games of tic-tac-toe that had a more open-world feeling to it than Dragon Age 2. I mean, we're stuck in Kirkwall the whole damn time, and this game ain't short. We're playing in the same dungeons over and over with some new quests, and they give us some new enemies there, but that's not good enough for a role-playing game. I need to feel like I'm an explorer, an adventurer in your world. Instead, by the end of this game, I feel like a jack-in-the-box, all curled up inside, whistling Pop Goes the Weasel. The second problem I had with Dragon Age 2 was the combat. At the beginning of the game, I was really enjoying it. It was easy to learn, and I felt like there was some serious depth to it. But it wasn't too long until I began to tire of this combat system. I found myself in a cycle. It was basically every battle, I would spend the majority of the time in the paused game screen, not being tactical, not making great ideas of how I'm going to attack these enemies, but simply filling my health up, and rotating the different characters to make sure that they had stamina and the ability to use their magic. So that was my first experience with the Dragon Age series. It wasn't until much later, not that long ago, that I ended up purchasing Dragon Age Origins during a Steam sale. And because I had heard so many people say, oh, Dragon Age 1 is so much better than Dragon Age 2. You've got to play that one. Don't judge the series by that game. And so I was like, all right, well, I don't know how much I spent, but it was probably less than $10. And the first thing that I noticed before the game even began was that I got to choose from several different races. And I really like that. I mean, I'm a Skyrim fan. You can play that game as many different races over and over and enjoy it. And I haven't played through the game with all the races in Dragon Age, but I did feel like the stories were very they definitely had a point of view for each race. And that I felt like was missing from Dragon Age 2. You were human no matter what, and you were really either a mage or not a mage, and that's how the differences of the story went. So, right off the bat, I really liked the fact that I felt like I had more of a choice of what I was going to approach this world like. The next thing I noticed in Dragon Age Origin was the difference in combat. And I have to give full disclosure, I was playing on the PC, and I'm not sure how the game played when it was on a console. But, on the PC at least, you were able to switch between an overhead view and an over-the-shoulder view. Which, when you're doing some tactics and strategy, that overhead view is really intuitive to be able to feel like you're making choices that matter in a battle. And for the fun of being over the shoulder and the excitement of being in that action, you can go to the third-person view. It's your choice. And not just views. I also felt like the spells, and I was playing as a mage most of the time, the choices I was making with my attacks were more meaningful per battle. Whereas I felt more in Dragon Age 2, I started to find my favorite spells and just used them all the time. So I enjoyed the combat in Dragon Age Origin a lot more. In preparation for this video, I thought it was only fair to go back to Dragon Age 2 and see if there were some things that I did like from it after getting familiar with the series. And this is what I found. I found that I really liked the user interface in Dragon Age 2 a lot better. I felt that it was really easy to learn and get into. Now, that's kind of the same experience I had the first time, but I didn't realize how much I had to really figure out the user interface for Origin. And secondly, the storytelling, although I don't like the fact that it was so narrow-minded that you have only really 2 stories to be told, I did appreciate the voice of the character. I enjoyed the voice acting and thought it was great. Both of them were good, but in Dragon Age 2, I felt there was a little more effort by adding the voice of your own character in. So let's get into what I'd like to see in Dragon Age Inquisition. For starters, we need to go back to the open world setting like Dragon Age Origins. Whatever possessed them to go to this single city setting for the game in Dragon Age 2, please, scrap it. We really enjoy the opportunity to be in an open world when we're role-playing. It allows us to leave the main quest, breathe a little bit, and really feel like we're part of the world. I'm not suggesting that it has to be any larger than Dragon Age Origins, but I think that that's a pretty good starting point. Let's try to keep it about that same size and fill it with even better content. Secondly, let's bring back the tactical RPG elements of Dragon Age Origins. I'm not saying it was perfect, but I think we can all agree it was better than Dragon Age 2, so why not build off of something we know is working and make it even better? One thing I'd like to see in that combat change, and I'm sure it's easier said than done, is make it so that there's more balance and variety in abilities and spells, so that you're not just waiting for your favorite spells to cool down before rotating back to that character and using it again. I'd like there to be so many options of spells or abilities to use that I'm kept busy until my thing has cooled down that I like to use so much. What I don't want to see is a combat system that encourages me to go into battle using my most powerful spells, but then spend the majority of the time in that battle just mashing my basic attack button. I'm not looking for Dynasty Warriors right now, I'm looking for Dragon Age. And last but not least, I'd like Dragon Age Inquisition to take a different approach to storytelling than we saw in Dragon Age 2. I'm not saying it has to be just like Dragon Age Origin, but Dragon Age 2 left me with this feeling of my story being on rails. I think the best place to diversify our story is right off the top. When you're creating your character, you should be able to choose a race. I want to be able to choose an elf, a dwarf, maybe a Canary, that's probably asking too much. But don't make the only meaningful choice whether or not I'm going to be a mage. The events of Dragon Age Inquisition are going to follow the events of Dragon Age 2, and I'm alright with that, because I'm genuinely interested in seeing what happens in the war between the mages and the Templar. I don't, however, think that the game should focus so heavily on this story that it takes up 90% of the gameplay. I think that Dragon Age Inquisition could really learn a lot from Skyrim. I feel like in that game, there is a storyline that you can progress, but it's really probably only about 25 to 40% of the game. Then all of a sudden you have all these other stories to unfold, like whether or not you're going to help the Imperials, or the Brotherhood of Evil, or you're going to join the Stormcloaks. That's the kind of game that I'm going to come back to and play more than one time. For my closing statement, I'm just going to say I'm picking up Dragon Age Inquisition either way. I'm just sitting here crossing my fingers that it's more like Dragon Age Origins and Baldur's Gate and Skyrim than it is like Dragon Age 2 and Dynasty Warriors. I'm not saying that either of those sets of games are better or worse than each other. I'm just telling you what I want from my Dragon Age series. But my opinion's not the only one that matters. You tell me what you want from your Dragon Age series. Put it in the comments below, and please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.